Hello again, second grade. Today's lesson is going to be about Native Americans of the Pacific Northwest. Now, we just finished Native Americans of the Southwest and talked about the tribes there. Now, the Pacific Northwest, you can see, is in orange up in this area. We talked about the Southwest. We talked about the Native Americans of the Plains, the Northeast and the Southeast woodlands. So we're slowly making our way all the way through the different tribes in the different regions of the United States. When you start this page, I want you to make sure that you answer your essential question: how did the natural resources in the Pacific Northwest affect Native Americans? What do you think? And then go through the word hunt down here at the bottom, where it says circle these words, natural resource and materials, and then find two other new words as you read along.
Lesson 5. Native Americans of the Pacific Northwest. Essential question: how did the natural resources in the Pacific Northwest affect Native Americans? What do you think? The Pacific Northwest. My class had already learned a lot about how Native American tribes of the United States were the same and different. We had just one more region to learn about: the Pacific Northwest. The Tlingit and Kwakiutl are examples of tribes who lived in this region. My class wondered what the land was like in the Pacific Northwest. The guide told us that this land had many trees and plants. There was plenty of food and natural resources in the ocean, rivers, and rainforests. Natural resources are materials found in nature that people use. The summers were cool and the winters were mild and wet. Quick check. What Native American tribes lived in the Pacific Northwest region? Quick check. How did the land of the Pacific Northwest compare to the land in the Southwest?
So we're going to go ahead and make sure that we completed the questions on the side and we circled everything that was asked of us. And then we're going to go over here and take a look and fill in our graphic organizer and answer our question that have to do with the quick check questions that we just listened to. Now the land over here, we can see that the land was wet. The temperatures over for weather, we can see the temperatures were mild. We know about the land if we go further up into this paragraph, that the land had many trees and plants, and there was plenty of food and natural resources provided by the land, the ocean, and the rivers. The weather, because it's a rainforest, or there's rainforest in this area, you know that the summers were cool and the winters were mild and wet. So there was a lot of rainfall, there was a lot of precipitation in the area. The tribes that lived there were the Tlingit and the Kwakiutl. Those both you can list over here, and remember to put them with a capital letter at the beginning because it's a proper noun. It's the name of those tribes. How does the land in the Pacific Northwest compare to the land in the Southwest? So the Southwest is the lesson that we had just completed. Go ahead and head back into that section and write how those two are different and how they are the same. Once you've completed that, we're going to head down into the next set of 2 pages. This again is also a rather short lesson. So it's just these few pages. There are extra supplemental videos that I do want you to watch that I have put into the section that has our videos and information for social studies. That'll give you a lot more information about these different tribes, their lifestyles, their homes, what their daily life is like. So there's a lot of really good and really interesting information that's going to be very useful for you when you do your quizzes. And once we get to the end of this unit and you go to do your big idea project.
Daily life in the Pacific Northwest. Many Native Americans of the Pacific Northwest lived in cedar plank houses. People placed large totem poles in the front of their houses. Totem poles are carved logs that are painted with symbols called totems. Tribes in the Pacific Northwest did not need to farm because their land was full of natural resources. Cedar trees were one of the most important resources. People used them to make houses, tools, totem poles, and even clothes. Men fished for salmon. It was the most important food. Housing. Most cedar plank houses were built in rows facing the ocean. Each house was home to many families. Food. People used nets made from cedar bark to catch salmon. They caught enough salmon in the spring to last through the winter. Practices and beliefs. People sometimes enjoyed a celebration called a potlatch. They celebrated special occasions with music and dance at a potlatch. Art. Totem poles told stories of important family members or special events. People carved animals, birds, fish, and important places on the poles. Clothing. During the summer, men wore breechcloths. Women wore skirts and capes made out of woven cedar. They both wore clothes made out of animal skins in the winter. People usually went barefoot even in the winter. Quick check. Why were cedar trees important to Native Americans of the Pacific Northwest?
Okay, now to answer that question, we can take a look at these different sections, and we can also take a look up here that tells us that cedar trees were one of the most important resources because the Native American tribes used them to build houses, tools, totem poles, and they used them for clothing. So it was one of the most widely used resources that they had in the area. Now we're going to go ahead and take a look at our reading skills, and we're going to circle the parts of the culture that were the same. So the large houses to hold many families, that was something that was the same as the Native Americans of the Southwest that we had just read about in the previous lesson. And we're going to underline the parts that are different. Now, over here, we see that there was a lot of natural resources already available in the land to the point where they didn't even have to farm because the resources were so plentiful. We read about different beliefs and practices. So go ahead and flip back to your previous lesson. Circle the things that are the same in both cultures for the Pacific Northwest and the Southwest, and underline the things that are different. Once you've done that, I want you to go ahead and answer your essential question down here, now that we've made it all the way through our lesson, about how natural resources in the Pacific Northwest affected the lives of the Native Americans there. Once you feel you've got a good handle on the lesson and you've read through it very carefully, you can go ahead and work on your quiz for lesson 5. One of the things I want you to do before you do your quiz is to make sure that you're watching all of the extra videos that I have posted under our materials and video lesson section in Google Classroom. You may use your book for the quiz as always, and please make sure you're reading the questions very carefully, you're giving it your best answer, and that your handwriting is neat on everything. Please also make sure that your name and date are on all the pages. That's all I have for your social studies lesson today. I hope you guys have a great day. Bye-bye.